Okay, so tonight we are talking about klezmer music and about klezmer instruments. And our very own 65th Street Klezmorim has volunteered to discuss all things klezmer and even demonstrate some of their instruments for us, and then answer some questions that you might have. So let's go ahead and get started. Who would like to volunteer to go first?
Oh, I'll do it then. I'll get it over with.
Wonderful. Okay, Myrna, and if everybody else could mute their mics, and if you have a question, wait until it seems like a logical spot, and then you can unmute and ask your question. Okay, take it away, Myrna.
Okay. Well, I really enjoy being in the klezmer band, and of course we're at Indianapolis Hebrew congregation, and we have Janice Roger, who's here, started the group years ago, and I've been in it for, about 4 years now, I think. And I thought I would tell you a little bit about Henry Saposnik, because I have a wonderful book by him that was recommended to me. And he's sort of helped a great deal to get klezmer music back to being a thing. And klezmer music originated in Eastern Europe. Eastern European Jews used music. They traveled to nearby towns and played for mostly weddings. But Henry Saposnik was, his parents were survivors of the Holocaust. He grew up in New York City, of course he was very musical, but he liked old time music. He got really into it, and he started going to North Carolina to hang out with old time musicians. And he was so interested in that music. And one day, one of them, whose name was Tommy Gerald, said, Hank, called him Hank, don't your people got none of your own music? And so it made him start to think about it, and he realized that he had a whole tradition to draw on, and started talking to his parents and his Zadie, and he did research at the Yiddish Research Institute in New York. And so he became a great force for bringing klezmer music back and getting it, to be recognized in the US. And do you want me to play something too? I'm done talking. Should I play?
Yeah, that would be great.
All right. Well, I'll play something that's a flute solo, and usually it has a trumpet with it. This is by Rebbe in Palestina. And so that's like the rabbi's house in Palestine. And this has a kind of Spanish sort of influence to it. And I suppose that they were going to go visit the rabbi. So here it goes. Yeah. I'll just leave you with that. That's my little introduction to klezmer.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Myrna, and thank you for the flute demonstration. That was really nice. There is a way for us to adjust our microphones so that the sound doesn't cut out while we're playing. If you are going to demonstrate an instrument today, if you go down to the bottom of your screen where it says mute, right next to mute, there's a little arrow pointing upwards. And let's see, if you click
share
that.
Options.
What's that?
Share options. Share content, my mistake.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. It says audio settings there. If you click audio settings, it should show, you can click, when it shows you settings or audio settings, there's a spot that says automatically adjust volume. Make sure that box is not clicked. Okay, you do not want to click that button. It's automatically clicked if you haven't changed it yet. So unclick that box.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
What's
Okay.
okay? So make sure that box is not clicked. Okay, that should help your audio, because otherwise the microphone makes it cut out just a little bit. We still heard you, Myrna. It just cut out a couple spots, so I just want to make sure
good.
that we don't have
Okay.
that. Yeah, it was beautiful. Thank you very much.
It's very nice.
And Janice, did you
Thank
raise
you.
your hand? You had something. Did you want to go next, or did you have something to add? You want to go next? Okay. All right. This is Janice Roger, the one and only.
I doubt I'm the one and only, but at any rate, I thought I'd give a little history of instrumental music in Jewish life. And instrumental music in Jewish life goes way back beyond klezmer. It starts really in the temple in Jerusalem, where the Levites used instruments during the temple worship. And one of the ways that we know this is from Psalm 150, part of which says, "Praise God with the sounding of the trumpet, with the harp and the lyre, with timbrel and dancing, with strings and pipe, with the clash of cymbals and with resounding cymbals." And that's from Psalm 150, a book which was completed probably in the second century before the Common Era. So that's fairly good evidence. But after the destruction of the temple in 70 of the Common Era, rabbis forbade the use of instruments in worship as a sign of mourning. And so we, as far as we know, and there's not a lot of written evidence to support this, there wasn't use of instruments in Ashkenazic, which is Central and Eastern European worship, until the 19th century in Germany. And that's a whole nother story, not apropos to klezmer. Meanwhile, there was a growth of a Jewish folk idiom in Central and Eastern Europe, which gave rise to the use of instruments in celebratory music. There's documentation of instruments in folk music in the mid-16th century, but they're not the same instruments that we know today in our klezmer. And instrumental music may have been used in some religious observances, such as Purim, sound familiar, ladies and gentlemen, and Hanukkah, and even Simchat Torah, which actually the rabbis frowned upon because it coincided with one of the holy days that's listed in the Torah, which would have been a day when you wouldn't work and when you wouldn't use instruments. But most often, instrumental music was part of a wedding feast. The Klezmorim of the 16th through 19th centuries were actually itinerant musicians who had to be able to easily transport their instruments from one location to another, so we wouldn't have a full trap set of drums like Ken plays these days. And also, there was no written score. The musicians learned and played their tunes by ear. Klezmer jumped from Europe to the New World toward the end of the 19th century as scores of Jews from Central and Eastern Europe came to America to start a new life. Most of them, who were instrumentalists, brought melodies with them. However, in 1924, the Kamen brothers published several books of music for use at Jewish gigs. And Shawn, I want to tell you that a couple of those books are on the shelf at Temple. They're not from 1924, but they're the same edition. One of the changes that their books wrought on the repertoire, the klezmer repertoire, was the instrumentation. So instead of a cymbal, which is a hammer dulcimer, the Kamen brothers scored for piano and later accordion. Then they added parts for mandolin and guitar and banjo. And in addition to the clarinet, saxophones became part of the ensemble, and actually the clarinet replaced the violin as a dominant melodic voice in the ensemble. And for a more thorough history, I would recommend the Book of Klezmer. That's the Book of Klezmer by Yael Strom, our friend Yael Strom, and I will type that into the chat section for everyone. Questions? Comments?
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
Janice, did you have anything that you wanted to play to demonstrate for us, or?
Not particularly. Thank you.
All right, maybe we can convince her later. All right, thank you so much. My dog Maxwell wanted to join the conversation. All right, who would like to volunteer to go next?
I can try to give a little more background that I've found. Hopefully it's right.
Great.
So
Thank you, Vicki.
continue before, can't do Janice and Meredith. So klezmer, if you haven't heard, is started in the traditional Eastern European. If you break down the word klezmer, from Hebrew, it says kli or kle, meaning tool or instrument, and then zemer, meaning melody, or like a vessel. So like klezmer is like the vessel or the instrument through the melody through the instrument, is what I found. And definitely beginning in, in Eastern European, the Jews lived in shtetls or ghettos, which is where this music was played. And as you said already, played without, it was being taught by rote, by hearing, and traditionally it was actually passed down from father to son because of where they worked. And traditionally women weren't allowed to play in public, I've read. Y'all can correct me if any of this is not what I've heard. And traditionally music was mostly just, the music was just the notes until like around the 16th century is when it beginning to add the lyrics. But also within the Jewish liturgies, they brought in maybe secular melodies or popular dances from other local villages around. And from the Hasidic movement, the nigunim came in, which are simple melodies without words. And as Shawn has taught us, the scale we use is called the Frege scale, which can be related to the fifth mode of harmonic minor for those of us who've done music. And I've also looked up, it actually sounds similar to like what's called the Romanian minor scale or the Ukrainian Dorian scale. And that's kind of some information I found. And I can sing a little bit with my hand drum if you want me to, or I don't know. We've done Nigun Atik before. So I brought got my drum with me. And this is actually a folk dance too that we've done in international folk dance. Od nashuva el nigun atik, ehazem perifeya era. Od pavi hameshumar nashik nashik, ali ahali ze einayim veherav. Tovu, tovu halenu ki, mahahohi siya. Tovu, tovu halenu, od nashuva el nigun atik.
Very nice. Thank you, Vicki. I haven't heard that in a long time.
Well done. I would like to go next because I kind of segue into what Vicki is talking about, if that's okay.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joel. And thank you, Vicki. That was wonderful.
Vicki, that was terrific. I went, oh, wow, what I'm talking about. So when you talked about klezmer musicians being trained, they are not only trained, they were kind of produced. My last name is Lisker. Several of you have heard this story. I learned it from the Henry Sposnick book. No one in my family knew what the name Lisker meant, but in the book, it talks about the town of Lisk in Poland, and there was a sizable Jewish population there. And of course, Jews were not allowed to go to formal music schools. So they trained their own musicians. A family who was musically inclined as they had children. They said, oh, we're going to need a clarinet soon, or violin, or what have you. And that child in their birth order was trained on that instrument. So they actually produced musicians. When you left Lisk, you were known as a Talisker, hence my last name, Lisker. So I always thought that was interesting. So I wanted to kind of play the scale, and I also wanted to bring back to, if there are new people here, to show you that I play saxophone in the klezmer band, and I started on tenor saxophone, which now to me at age 72, it's a beast of an instrument. But I'm going to play that one, and I thought I would play a major scale and a Frege or a klezmer or a Jewish or whatever scale, so that everyone could hear the difference. And then I recorded myself on the tenor sax playing Russian Share, part A. And I thought I would play that and accompany myself on the alto sax, which is what I play now. I tried this last night. I Zoomed with my sons, and it seemed to work. So let's see if I don't cut myself off. If I disappear off frame for a moment, I'm getting my beast. So this is my tenor saxophone. And I know I was prepared for this. I was going to be too low. So I'll just raise myself up a little bit here. I don't know if you can see me any better, if it was worth it, but I'll be stepping back. So this is a tenor, and this is a simple scale in major form. Now I'm going to play the klezmer version of it. So far, thumbs up if I'm coming through okay, not too loud, not. Okay, good. All righty. So one more time, here's a slightly different scale. I'll play major, and then I'll play klezmer so you can hear the difference. That's the klezmer sound. Now I'm going to, we'll see how this comes out. I'm going to play myself, let's see, at 0.34. Well, this is myself playing on tenor Russian Share, just part A. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey! Hey! I hope that worked.
It did. Sounded good.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. And having picked up my tenor, which has a beautiful sound, but boy, to schlep that to gigs and to practices, I think I outaged it. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, and I'll let somebody else go now.
When you complained about schlepping the equipment, you should have seen Ken. He was pointing to his drum set going, what are you talking about?
He's a young man yet. He's a young man yet. And just between you and me, Shawn, I've been watching Leo P with his baritone, and he handles that thing like it's a clarinet. That's amazing.
That's great.
Okay, thank you. I'll let someone else go.
Thank you so much for sharing, Joel. That was beautiful. All right, who would like to go next?
I'll go next.
Okay, Barry's next. Thank you.
So we've had Joel just demonstrating the Ahava or Fragish mode. There are some other modes in klezmer music too. The one Joel demonstrated was the most common, but some of the others are the Misha Bayrak mode, also called Ahava Rabbah, and another mode is called Adonai Malach, which is also similar to Mixolydian. In fact, the Myrna demonstrated a portion of the tune Ban Rebbe in Palestina, which is uses the Adonai Malach mode. I thought I'd demonstrate the Misha Bayrak mode using part of the tune Odessa Bulgar. Abe Schwartz recorded this tune 1919. It's a lively Bulgar in key of D, Misha Bayrak. What else do I want to say about it? One other thing, on several klezmer tunes, they tend to change modes in different parts. I'm not going to demonstrate that here, but here's a portion of Odessa Bulgar.
Great. Thank you so much, Barry. And of course, Barry was playing a clarinet. Yeah, so as we go through, make sure if you're demonstrating an instrument, definitely tell us what it is, just in case, just in case. All right, great. Wonderful job, Barry. Who would like to go next? Don't everybody volunteer at once.
I vote for Lenny.
I was just gonna say that.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, what I have here is actually not a klezmer instrument at all. Let's see. This is a French horn, which gets its name because when it was imported into England, it came from France, but it's not really called, it's mostly called a horn in other countries. In fact, the official name for it is horn, not French horn. But anyway, it's not really a klezmer instrument, but it's what I've been playing lately. What else can I say about it? Most people are probably familiar with it. You've probably seen it. And you know that there's the bell, which is a huge thing. It's easily dented. Everything about this instrument is fragile. And the normal way of playing is you put your hand in the bell, but you don't block it completely. You just partially put your hand. It's almost like you're shaking hands. So if you can see the shape of my hand, it goes in the bell like about that. And the reason for that is to soften its sound. Originally, when it was played in the 1600s, it was a hunting instrument. It was used outdoors. Gradually, it was brought indoors and used to accompany orchestras or small musical groups, but it still had a pretty raucous sound. And somehow in the early 1700s, people figured out that you could soften the sound by putting your hand in it. And they also figured out that you could, by partially blocking the bell with your hand, you could get kind of a full chromatic scale, which was how it was used in Mozart's time. So anyway, I'll just play a little excerpt from a Fiddler on the Roof arrangement that I think some people have played in the klezmer band. I haven't. I happen to have a third horn part. So anyway, here I'll just play a very short excerpt. Whoop. Should have practiced that one. All right, that's the sound of the French horn, which I've turned into a klezmer instrument.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lenny. All right, and I think Eddie wanted to go next.
How did you know? It's like,
Thank you, Eddie.
of course. Hi, I'm Eddie. So I've played in the klezmer for a while. I played in high school, and then I went to college and moved away, and then I came back. So I've played a couple instruments in the band. I used to play guitar. Now I play bass. So this is my violin bass. Rather than going into the history of like its role in klezmer music, I was just going to talk about it as an instrument, right? Because most music styles have a bass line. One of the things that I read that I liked when I think about the bass is it's kind of it goes along really nicely in the rhythm section. So I play a lot with Ken with the drums, but I'm kind of playing with his foot, right? So when he hits the bass and you get that oomph, the bass instrument is a tone that goes with it. So I try to hold on to that. I look at the role of the bass as similar to the drums as helping keep time, because a lot of what I play in klezmer is 1-3, 1-3. It's akin to like a tuba or other oompa kind of things. I'd also add electric bass, not necessarily a klezmer instrument, more acoustic style, but it works. This is a bass guitar, right? So the strings are similar to a guitar. It's got frets on the neck. It was an easier transition to go from guitar to this than it would be like a proper stand-up bass, which I probably couldn't play that easily if I tried. Not that I'm some expert at this. This is an amplified instrument. I am attempting to play it amplified into a little capture card on my computer. So you'll either hear very loud bass, nothing at all, or something in the middle. The thing is, I could play anything that I normally play because it's all kind of the same. It's all like 1-2, 1-2 kind of thing. So can you hear that? All right, wonderful. So the thing is, this is the bass line, right? This is a G and a D. Except it's not in that order. It's actually not that at all. This is an A and a D. All right, anyway. That's what the bass does in klezmer. So, whatever chord or key we're in at the moment, I'm often playing the root and the third. And then every once in a while, I get a fun run, which is really fun to do, and I can't talk while I do that. Oops, that's not how that goes. You'll have to believe me, they're fun. And I just can't do it on the fly. Anyway, that's the bass. It's mostly the same all the time, but that's fun because there are things you can do with it. And I'm often playing, other people come in and out and solo and whatever. I get to play the whole time, which I actually really get a kick out of. So there you go. If you play guitar and thought about the bass, you could totally do it. I could. There you go. I don't know. Now I'm mad about the run that I'm not doing right. Wrong key. Close enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eddie.
So Eddie, people are wondering if the robot in the background is digital or actually there.
Sorry, I muted. Yeah, this is from work. So I work from home. This is Storebot. He is the unofficial mascot of stores engineering at Target. I made him. Nice. And this is now there's a bunch of these at headquarters in Minneapolis as trophies. This is my trophy for actually designing it. And he sits here because I take work calls from right here too.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Eddie. All right, let's go on. Adam, did you have something that you wanted to share?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, here's a bass clarinet. So it looks like a saxophone, but it's not. It's a clarinet family member. It's special because it can go very low. It can go one lower than a tenor saxophone can, for example. So it goes very low, and it's kind of melodic sounding and fairly pretty sounding. And I enjoy playing it. I've played it for almost 30 years now. And I play it in klezmer band because it works well in klezmer. There's also a drum set on the other side of the house over here, which I'll show you in a second. I'll walk over to it. Put this down first. That's done. Here's my basement. All kinds of fun stuff happening here. And there's my drum set by the bar, of course. I made a lot of money playing this drum set. I played it for years as a pro. And I don't play klezmer band because we already have somebody playing it. Ken. I'll let you keep your job. I will, I promise. This is my drum set. It sounds like a drum set. I'm going back to where I was sitting, which is the poker table in my basement. It's a fun area of my house. And that's what I have. That's it.
All right, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Adam.
Sure, thank you.
Very
Stand
good.
up.
And let's see. Brienne, you wanted to play some trumpet for everyone, didn't you?
I guess.
All right. We've got Brienne here with the trumpet.
This is a trumpet. It's in the same family as Lenny's French horn, or horn, sorry.
No offense taken.
Very good. I'm usually better at that. The trumpet oftentimes has the melody along with the clarinet in the klezmer music. I've been playing with the klezmer band, I think, for like a year-ish now. Yeah, about a year and a half. So it's cool getting to learn about a new style of music and culture. So I'm very thankful to everybody in the klezmer band for being willing to always answer my probably really dumb questions. But I'm learning a lot, so I'm very thankful for you guys. So the trumpet makes sound by just blowing air through the horn, makes vibrations, and sounds like this.
Very nice.
And that was, of course, Name That Tune. Yes, Janice has it. Janice had it. She was muted, but I saw your lips. She said, Cole and Mikey. Good job.
Oh, right. How quickly we forget.
It's been a while, hasn't it? What's that, Janice? You were muted again.
That's because we haven't played for a while.
That's right. Yeah, it's only been, well, let's not think about that. Okay. It's been a while. All right, let's move on. And we've got Ken Gould with some drum set and history. Go ahead, Ken.
All right. So, here I am sitting behind a modern set of drums. It has a snare drum and a low high tom-tom and a low one and a bass and all kinds of cymbals. But this is an instrument of this time. And as klezmer music was forming in Eastern Europe and Western Russia in the 18th and 19th centuries, this kind of percussion instrument really wasn't part of instrumentation. If some of you go back and watch the Fiddler on the Roof movie, there's a wedding scene, and there's a klezmer band playing in front of the wedding party, but it's a violin and a clarinet and another wind instrument, but there are no percussion instruments involved. And when klezmer music first started, this was the usual instrumentation until later in the early 19th century, as Jews who had been conscripted into the army of the Tsars in Russia, and some of them learned how to play musical instruments, were conscripted into the marching bands, and they started to bring those instruments into the Jewish music scene, but they were played like military instruments, as you can imagine. Etc. Very much heavily on the beat. Nothing more complicated than that. And then as klezmer moved to the west a little into Europe and eventually into the United States, the instrumental percussionists got a little more clever. Something like that, a little variation on the beat. And as things started to heat up a little bit, and klezmer, the recipe of klezmer got exposed to other kinds of music, the beats picked up a little bit. Something like that. And many of you have heard the traditional hora beat, which came from other parts of the world, which was incorporated into klezmer music. And if any of you have heard us perform, for example, many of our tunes incorporate both kinds of rhythmical examples. As klezmer music came across the Atlantic and went through Ellis Island, it of course rooted in New York City, which was the home of so much music and culture and art early in the 20th century. And many klezmer musicians, many Jewish musicians, got involved in theater and Second Avenue music, things like that, and many popular tunes actually had klezmer and Jewish influences. Irving Berlin and Henny Youngman and many musicians had klezmer influences. Even the musician Spike Jones, who had a particular following, many of his recordings sounded like riots at recess, but they involved a lot of different trap instruments, as I have here. You might be able to see on my drum set, like a woodblock, which we use for accents, various things, and possibly even a cowbell every once in a while. And if we're really feeling crazy, even a siren. But all of these various sounds sometimes get incorporated into the various kinds of klezmer music that we play. Sometimes as rubato, as ballads. Or as something more up-tempo. So there's a lot of ways that this particular instrument has gotten melded into klezmer music, and the revival of klezmer music here in the U.S. in the late 60s and early 70s that really led to the formation of our band. And it's a lot of fun to incorporate these things. I particularly have a lot of fun with Eddie Roger playing bass, because we can, as a rhythm section, implement a lot of different styles of music into klezmer. Sometimes he and I will sound more like the rhythm section of a rock and roll band than we do actually than of something traditionally klezmer. But if we have that klezmer idea in mind, we can make a lot of these different kinds of things work.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ken.
Great. Thank you, Ken. Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. So I think I got to everybody, right? Did I leave anybody out? Okay. So the past year or so, the Klezmer Band has been giving master classes at various places, educational master classes and fun master classes that involve dancing and learning a little bit about the tradition as well. So I definitely want to thank everybody that tuned in tonight. Thank you for giving us an outlet, an opportunity to continue to share more klezmer music and information with you. We're going to be working on a special project over the next month, and we hope to be able to share even more klezmer music with you at the end of that. So watch for that. I'd like to open it up now for questions. We can answer all of your innermost burning questions about klezmer music and about our instruments. Anything else you might have a question about, don't ask us for relationship advice, but we'd be happy to answer your questions. So does anybody have a question? Yes, Rhonda, go right ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Okay. How did the whole group get started? Was it one person talking to another person and they said, hey, let's do this? Or were you just all frustrated artists, or how did it begin?
I'm going to open that to Janice. I think you could answer that.
Well, sometime in the mid-90s, there were some kids in our high school program that played instruments. So we got them together for basically a team group. And that ran for maybe 6-8 weeks. And then I forget exactly, well, actually, my first attempt at starting a klezmer band was about the first or second year I was at IHC, so the late 70s, early 80s. And there were two people, Paul Gittleson, who played with us recently for a while, and Pearl Jaffe, who played the violin. And they were willing to give it a shot, but they were the only two. So after I had this high school group in the mid-90s, we started a band with high school kids and other kids. And really, by the end of the 90s, we had quite a nice group going that was a mixed group of adults who played instruments and kids. And that was our origin.
Okay, great.
Sure.
Great, thank you.
To add a little bit to that.
Yes.
So after Janice started this band up, my wife and I moved to the Midwest from the East and joined IHC. And I mentioned to somebody one day that, I played drums and as an amateur drummer back in the East, and grabbed my shirt and said, you have to go see Cantor Rogers. She has a klezmer band. And I said, a what? And so I did. And she said, well, I have to come to the first rehearsal, one of our rehearsals. So I did. And the synagogue at that time had the rudiments of a drum set. It was missing a few pieces, but anyway, I sat in at the first rehearsal, and gosh, Janice, I can't remember who all was there. Paul Gittleson probably was there, and some other people. And they started to play. And something in my chest started to buzz. And I said, oh my goodness, isn't this wonderful? And as a Jewish person, as a musician, there was something about the character of the music.
Your
really,
yeshama. How do you pronounce that?
yeah, that's right.
Your soul. What's the word?
The neshama. That's
There you
right.
go. Okay. Sorry to interrupt.
That really spoke to me. And one of the highlights of my time in the klezmer band, I think it was like, might have even been the first rehearsal, I don't remember. Right after the end of a tune or something like that, Janice turned around and pointed at me and said, "You're hired." And I was thinking to myself, good, I'm glad. But it was the character of the music, for us as Jewish musicians, that speaks. And when we play this music, it's an opportunity not only to scratch our own itch, of course, but to act as teachers, as messengers to other Jews and other people who learn the music. So it's a really important part of the music for me. It's I think every musician, all of us, Barry and Joel and Eddie and Lenny, everybody, know very well that there's no greater fun in the world than sitting with a bunch of musicians and playing live music. Doesn't matter what you play. And so to be able to combine those two things together in a klezmer band really makes the experience special.
Well, it's a good thing you didn't quit, Ken.
That's right.
But we've had some really interesting people. And one of the things that some of you don't know about me is that I'm an instrumentalist anyway. While I've sung all my life, I also play the flute. And I just really have enjoyed being able to create instrumental music in the synagogue, whether it's for the klezmer group or for our Shabbat services, and writing arrangements and transcribing music for the group. So it's really important to me, and I'm glad that it's become important to IHC. And I am really grateful to Shawn, who was there to take over the reins when we needed her.
I couldn't agree more on both counts. Thank you, Janice and Shawn.
Well, thank you. And Janice, I'm glad that you scouted Ken, because he's a real catch. So thank you. You've been just wonderful, Ken. And Ken has also volunteered and has been playing with the Marian University Jazz Band, where I direct the jazz band there. And he's filled in for us there too. He really is pretty versatile. He can do anything. So thank you for that, Ken.
Did we mention the lifetime contract that Ken is not aware that has been signed for him?
Sure
Salary doubles every year. Every year. Your salary doubles every year.
Yeah, and Janice, you also recruited me as well. Back. That was like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago now at this point, when I started playing for the Shabbat services. So thank you for that. And thank you to also Cantor Aviva, for recruiting me to continue this tradition with the klezmer band. It has been the joy of every week for me is coming to klezmer rehearsals. I love it. And I learn from you guys all of the time. So thank you so much. I'm sure I learned just as much tonight about klezmer music as a lot of our guests did tonight. So
You're a quick study.
Well, thank you. So does anybody else have any other questions? We have just a couple of minutes left. We can answer some more questions.
Sammy should play something. I said Sammy should play something.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. In my craze of kid wrangling, I opted to keep my video off. But I just want to jump in for a quick moment and thank each and every Roger for this unbelievable. When I first community and I was told, oh, and by the way, we have an in-house klezmer band. I thought, what? Like, this is amazing. And then to meet each and every one of you and see how much of your souls you really give to the community and to this music and keeping this tradition alive. You know, I mean, it's really a beautiful gift to the entire community. And then from the bottom of my heart, Shawn, what a gift it is to have you and to work with you and to be able to call you my friend. So it's an honor and a pleasure, and I'm so grateful to all of you. And thank you for your willingness to jump into this virtual world that we all got thrown into. And kol hakavod for just kind of rolling with it and doing a beautiful job. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you to all of you for sharing your gifts with us tonight. Thank you so very much. I hope it was enjoyable and informative for everybody.
Yes,
Yes.
I enjoy it.
All right. Thank you all so much. Well, have
Okay.
a wonderful week. And Klezmer Band, we will be in touch tonight with our plans for our big surprise for the community.
Okay. Looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
All right. Thank you. Thank you all.
Bye.